We're gonna take this again, and I'm gonna be professional this time.
Okay. I don't care.
I'm gonna do a great job this time.
Good.
Okay, we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1. Hey guys, welcome back to the Lou Perez podcast. My name is Lou Perez. If you want to support the podcast, please head over to locals.com and join the Lou Perez community. That's thelouperez.locals.com. And I'm very excited to have my next guest, Amy Alkon. Amy writes applied science, translating scientific research into understandable language and then turning it into practical advice. She is also a mediator, both working for hire and volunteering in the L.A. City Attorney's Office, doing free dispute resolution for L.A. residents. Amy, thank you so much. You're over on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. It's about, 8 o'clock right now on my end, and it feels like so late because I have a child and we don't get much sleep on these parts, but I hope you're sleeping well over on the West Coast.
Well, all I do all day is sit at my computer and then I go to sleep. And so it's just, nothing exciting ever happens. So I don't know how I could do anything but sleep these days.
Yeah. Well, for anyone who doesn't follow you, you're an awesome follow, especially on Twitter and the stuff that you write about for Advice Goddess. And one of the things that we were talking about earlier, we were talking about which glasses you should be putting on because you wanted to have kind of like the smart thing going, but also smart, but maybe a little crazy. And I had to show you this picture. Here we go. There's this picture. For those of you who are just listening to the audio, you can't see this, but I'll tell you what it is. My son has a book of the alphabet, and it's all based in Brooklyn. And so you have like A, you have B, like B will be like the Brooklyn Bridge. And when you get to I, there's a picture of intellectuals. And there's one intellectual, and apparently to be an intellectual, you have to be a bald dude with a ponytail who has, I guess, like a glass of wine and a laptop. And then boom, you're an intellectual right there. So, Amy, you don't look like this guy at all. So.
This is good. If I were bald, I'd be so traumatized. There's so much going on now. Just losing my hair, I just lose it all.
So how did you get involved with doing like applied science? How did that work?
Actually, in New York. It was an accident. It was a prank. 2 friends and I gave free advice on the street corner in Soho as a joke. And because it was free, we thought, the Lucy 5 cents thing, and we didn't think anybody would even give us 5 cents. So we made it free. We really undercut the price. And so, New York, it's free. We had a cardboard sign, but free, they lined up around the block. And people started asking us serious questions. Like we had stuff on our sign like nail biting and directions. I mean, this is all we were qualified to answer. But then when people started asking us about breakups or depression, I thought, oh crap, I better learn something. And so I read through all of psychology and was sort of was very unimpressed by Freud. He basically just made stuff up. And when you read like that, you end up getting, an independent sense of what's of value and what's not. And I discovered Albert Ellis, who founded what's called rational emotive behavior therapy, which is cognitive therapy. It's a certain kind. And he became kind of a mentor. And I ended up just getting increasingly scientific, making my column more and more science-based, because basically I don't think that you should listen to me if I don't say something that's based in more than my, hey, hi, I'm a girl with red hair and I have an opinion.
And nowadays it's a sort of a mantra. It's listen to the scientists, listen to the scientists. So how do you determine which scientists to listen to?
Well, I don't listen to scientists. What I do is I look at research and I see if it has good methodology. If there's a body of research that says the same thing, which makes it more likely to be a finding that's based in something other than hacked stats, because that's a thing that's been going on now, or people have discovered. And I use evolutionary psychology as a foundation for all my work. And this is basically how we think now, our psychology now, that's based on the solutions to recurrent problems throughout human evolution for survival and mating. How do we get along with each other and then leave children who survive to pass on our genes? And we still have that psychology. We have iPhones, and then we have this antique psychology that is perfect for life if you're a hunter-gatherer running around in the woods, and often imperfect for our lives.
Yeah, I think I often find with when I'm looking at science, sometimes I wonder, hey, am I just looking for the study or the little factoid or am I just cherry picking as a way to justify an action or a behavior that I don't want to change? Like it's sort of something with, if you can look at it like with diet. And sort of how it seems like there are all these diet fads all over the place, and it's like, oh, if I just read this one headline that says, you know what, I should be eating 20 eggs a day. It's like, all right, well, I'm already eating 20 eggs, so you know what, the science says that what I'm doing is right for me, so I'm just going to go with that.
Most people aren't able to. They're not interested in. They're not able to go pick through the scientific database and read studies, and so reporting is often really inaccurate. There's something called absolute versus relative risk, and a tiny risk, like it goes from 1% to 2%. It's like, oh my God, the risk is doubled. That's how it gets reported in a news article. And so people think, my God, that's so terrible. But it's not terrible, especially because you're going to have individual risk factors or lessened risk, based on your personal health. And so you look at it and you can evaluate it that way. And so I've spent all these years, I just constantly read stuff on statistics and on vetting studies and on methodology and what's good methodology, what's not, what kind of replication should be done. That's where you rerun somebody's experiment to see if you get similar results. And so all of this, if you're not really diving in this way, there's a very good chance that you're going to read something that if you had any sort of background, you'd say, oh my God, no. And so that's why it's so hard to do this. And I look to people like a guy on diet who I think is very good is Dr. Michael Eadeses and Dr. Mary Dan Eadeses. Mike blogs more than Mary Dan does, but they wrote Protein Power, and they are science-based medicine practitioners, and they got about, 10,000 people in Arkansas thinner by eating, prescribing basically a low-carb, high-fat diet. And that's what I eat. And really, though there are individual differences, we all have a pancreas, and eating sugar and flour seem to be the most pernicious things that we can eat. And so do you eat less fat? Do you eat more fat? My boyfriend eats less fat than I do. My brain all day is reading through these very, intense texts, and I'm writing and rewriting. And so I am a fat monster. I just want to stick my head in a gallon of melted butter. I mean, don't we all?
For those who are just listening, Amy is not literally a fat monster. She's a monster that consumes fat, not a Leviathan and all that.
I'm a slim monster. I lie about my weight though, and then I instantly tell people that I lied. So,
yeah, I noticed definitely with diet a few years ago. It was pretty easy for me. I basically just said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to eat any bread. I'm not going to eat any of those kinds of carbs, and my stomach was flat and flat, but also not like I didn't feel bloated, and it was such a quick change too. And nowadays it's like, yeah, I know what I need to do in order to go back to having like the flat stomach and all that. I'm like, but you know what? I'm sort of enjoying bagels again. I'm enjoying all that kind of stuff. But at least it's something where it's like I did the experiment on myself, and I could say like, hey, you know what? Actually, I have a marker of like how I felt and how I looked that I can sort of look back to.
Well, see, I'm writing a medical expose now. I know I said I wouldn't talk about it. That's about as much as I'll say, but I see that sugar and flour are so pernicious, and inflammation, they're associated with inflammatory processes in the body, which are associated with aging. And so I make that trade-off that I don't eat sugar or flour. I eat one tiny ice cream because I have this in my book, Unfuckology. I write about willpower, and I look at how we're going to fail in our willpower. And so by doing that with this little teeny ice cream, I then don't feel deprived. So I don't go to a party and just fly into the cookies and just spend my whole time ignoring the people and just being like hand to mouth.
Yeah, I happen to be in a household with a woman who is in great shape. She, exercises a lot, and she has an insane sweet tooth. So she's always down to like have sweets and that sort of thing. So, um, yeah, and we might have to get a divorce if I'm gonna like get a six pack again to go back there. Uh, on your book, Unfuckology. Can you explain the title of that book?
Well, actually, it was supposed to be called Unfuck Yourself! Exclamation point. I wasn't sure if I could swear on your
Oh
show.
yeah, no, go
I
for
said
it.
crap before instead of, I think, shit or something.
Just
Oh,
let it
good. Because
let it flow.
I love all the words, including all the bad ones. So it was supposed to be called Unfuck Yourself. And then somebody another publisher stole our title. We had announced it 4 years earlier. This happened. So now I told my current publisher that I don't want them to announce the book until like 10 minutes before it comes out, because I'm so afraid of that happening. People don't steal. You know this as a comedian. People have the same idea at the same time, but this guy had self-published a book with that title, and then somebody else, another publisher, bought it, and they're like, "Oh, look, she announced 4 years earlier in the trades. Let's rush this to press." And then, you can't have a book with the same name, so I did change it.
Was it a similar subject matter? Like, did you read the guy's book, or
Oh
was it?
no, I didn't. I didn't read it
It sounds like
because
some kind of like you said it was self-published. I wonder if it's like some self-published erotica where it's
no. I think
yeah,
he's a guy who's somebody. He's like a life coach or something.
yeah.
So, but my book is intensely based in science, and it's based in transdisciplinary science. So I mentioned Albert Ellis, he's dead now, unfortunately, but he swore all the time. He was a big influence on me. He read my column in the New York Daily News, my first column, and he really liked it because I was very reason-based. And his form of therapy is rational emotive behavior therapy, that you're disturbed because you're thinking irrationally. And if you identify your irrational thoughts and you figure out what the rational thinking is, then you can be less disturbed, be happier, have a better life. And so I felt very sort of, I have no credentials, kind of. I had that feeling, and I was worried about it. And I thought, even though I read on my own, I always have, just voraciously, I read. My house is filled. There are thousands of studies on the floor, each with pile with a rock on top, so my dog won't knock them over. So it's not like I need grades. But Ellis said, don't go to school. It would be a waste of time. He said, it would be a waste of time. That's how he talked. You know what you need to know, and just look at stuff on your own. And so that's what I've done. And in school, if you get a PhD, you have to do what I call narrowcasting, which is study one area. And there's all this academic bullshit. You have to go to these meetings with these horrible people, and they make stupid decisions. You just have to sit there and shut up, which I'm very bad at. So I was thrilled not to do this. And this means, so my book is based in social science and cognitive neuroscience and evolutionary psychology and medical research. It's based in all these different areas, or more too. And that makes it better value than somebody, for example, if you just read one study in one area and you don't know the corresponding areas that sort of feed into that, you don't have a very holistic view that you're giving people. And so because I don't have a PhD, there's a certain amount of credit I don't get. People think you're nobody. What are you? You don't have these credentials. But there are people who look for that. They value people by their credentials, and they don't look at what I say and what I write. And so what I try to do with everything I write is to give people something they cannot get elsewhere. And so this book, Unfuckology, it's a book about what's called embodied cognition. And I describe this as your mind is bigger than your brain. So your mind is your whole body and your actions. People talk about from the gut.
Yeah.
All of you influences how you act. And your emotions drive actions, but actions also drive emotion. And so what's great about this is that it means you can change the way you feel by acting differently. You want to be a person who has self-respect. Act like a person who has self-respect. That'll be scary. You'll have to speak up, grow a pair and all that, but you'll do it and you'll see, okay, nobody chased me out of the coffee shop with a broom. She might have grumbled, the lady I was, grew a pair for and, showed, acted with self-respect to, but people ultimately respect you and often give you what you ask for if you just assert yourself.
Yeah, that reminds me. I'm sure you're familiar with Jordan Peterson and his book 12 Rules for Life, and one of them it seems pretty simple. It's stand straight with your shoulders back, and I've noticed it in a different example where I remember I was driving and I was having a fine day. It was okay, no traffic or anything like that, not a problem. And then I just started. I was thinking, what'll happen if I just start cursing, just for no reason, just start cursing, and I started cursing while driving, and I started to get really pissed off, and I start like for there was nothing going on except for me sort of manifesting this thing, and it's like, oh. I'm making myself feel this way because these actions that I'm taking.
Darwin said something, I may not get the quote exactly right, but I think he said the expression of emotion amplifies the emotion. So if you're angry, if you express anger, this thing, Freud, just bullshit,
Yeah.
catharsis. The idea that if you just vent your anger, that you're going to feel less angry. You feel more angry. You feel increasingly angry. But what I say is that, and forgive me, all you gamers, if I use this wrong, you can use your emotions like a joystick. That's probably wrong. But that you can basically change how you feel by just acting a certain way. And you can use that throughout your life. I say your feelings are not the boss of you. That's my favorite chapter. And I used this recently because I was all sort of bummerino from COVID and people were dying and businesses were closing. And I just wanted to face plant on the couch, but I need to exercise and I do intervals on a bike. And so I just said to myself, okay, you paralyzed? Oh, no, good. Get on the bike. Get on the bike now. And actually, I use profanity with myself. I'll be like, get on the bike, asshole, because that's fun. And it's energizing. I write about a guy named Stevens' research in the book on profanity and use of profanity. And I really find that to be sort of self-deprecating with myself, well, obviously with myself, that it feels empowering and funny and fun. It gives me put some levity into whatever I'm dealing with. And also part of this too, speaking to yourself in the third person, very interesting research I have in the book also on that. This seems to give you distance from yourself, emotional distance, the way you would have if you were a friend talking to you instead of you talking to you. Come on, Amy, get cracking here. That sort of thing is actually really helpful. And so all of these tools, this is the stuff that I just wish I knew in my 20s because I would have been just lived so much less stressfully and fearfully and wormily than I did.
Yeah, I notice when I'm 38, and when I look back, especially at myself in my 20s, it's I almost don't know who that guy is anymore. So anytime that I'm recounting a story, I don't see it as myself. I see it as, oh, this dude was going through this, and that separation, that distance that I have makes it a lot easier to actually confront some of the worst shit that I did or stuff that I'm just ashamed over. But I think I'm lucky too in that I'm a comedian, I'm a writer, so I've been sort of gifted this opportunity to take some of the worst stuff, from my life, or just awkward stuff, and use it, and sort of like sublimate it. And I don't know if Freud would use that word, sublimate, or something like that.
I don't really know that word. I mean, I know it, but I don't. It's not something I use. What I actually see in my own life and think that we should all apply once we get a little older, or in general, is just self-compassion. And this is, there's a researcher, Kristen Neff, who does some really great work on this. And she said that that one way to look at the stuff you've done that maybe you're not so thrilled with is that being fallible connects you to other humans. And I see that as a mediator. Just we're all suffering and struggling and do really dumb things and sometimes really rotten things. And to me, what's important is that I reflect on what I did. Maybe I don't reflect on it immediately. Like in my 20s, I didn't really have the insight to reflect like I do now, but that you do better, that you say, okay, I'm going to do better. And then if you fail at that, you forgive yourself and just say, okay, all right, I'm going to try again. I want to do better. I do want to do better. I'm going to do better tomorrow than I did today. Or if you have half a day left, you still have half a day to do better.
Right.
And And that's a really important thing. And that's the thing where I think, in your 20s, there's a tendency to be really harsh. And once you've lived for a while, you just see all these people who do all these things. It's just human nature to do dumb stuff we're ashamed of. And then, okay, clean up from it and understand that a lot of stuff, shame is interesting. There's a lot of crap stuff out there on shame. And there's research, this idea that shame, it's Helen Block Lewis from Yale from like 1972. Shame is I'm bad, and guilt is I did something bad. There's no empirical support for this. She just made this up. And this is the stuff I take such issue with, where people just believe it because they haven't dug into the research base. And Dan Sneisser and his colleagues at UCSB, and now he's somewhere else, they did excellent research, cross-cultural, which is really important. So it's not just like 46 kids in a university, in America in a psych class getting extra credit. They did it in India, Israel, and the US. And they looked at what sort of things make people ashamed. And shame, actually, it turns out we all are ashamed about the same things. They're a little different. So in India, if you pass food using your poo hand, which, that's a problem, and then you feel ashamed and people rain shame down on you if they see that, because that's disgusting and you could get a disease. So shame, it centers around things that we shouldn't do that are bad for, other humans in some way. And so cheating, infidelity, cheating at cards, all of these things bring shame on us. And it turns out what Dan's research with his colleagues suggests is that shame is actually information driven, and shame is it's a mechanism for avoiding social devaluation. And we have these internalized mechanisms. We know. So if you're in America, I didn't finish my story. It's ADD, which is all right. See, that's my thing. I'm like, a disorder? No, it's, for me, it's a feature, but it has some costs. Like I tell stories like, like there's a fly circling. So I eventually get back to the thing. So in America, if you have poo on your pants, that's a shameful thing. So it's poo. It just manifests in different poo ways. In Israel, it's probably similar to America. So I have a dog walking around here. Come on. Oh, gross. It's so disgusting. And so shame is information driven. It's brought on by the sense others could devalue us for a behavior. And so we either avoid doing those things that could bring on social devaluation, or if we do them, we try to cover them up. And so shame is actually, it's adaptive. It's a helpful, functional, useful tool for us. And self-esteem, which is also, that's the idea of self-esteem is you like you. That's another thing. No functional reason for that. Sorry.
Yeah, but before we get into
interview, you're running off with the interview.
on the shame front, do you think that, we've become a less shameful society, or people feel less shame now than they once did?
I think that
Is
some
shame
people,
going away?
Okay. What is that? It's you sort of need to narrow that down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I guess I would think that anybody who, say from, 50 years ago, say, if we were to give them the ability to sort of go through the internet the way that we do, and the stuff that they would find that people are, putting out there about themselves, it might be considered, some pretty shameful activities. Like the amount of people who have filmed themselves committing crimes and have been caught because they posted the video on, on social media, for example.
But that's exhibitionism. And so, that they're thinking our brains, they're not so smart. That they, things there's something that goes front and center. And maybe they weren't, that's not the idea of like, oh, I'm robbing somebody. That's sort of very far back. Oh, yeah. If you ask them, if you bring them into mediation, or we do these restorative justice mediations, where a person who's committed a crime talks to the person whom they victimized. In that session, if you say to them, do you understand, how, hurt and how injured Mr. So-and-so was and how much pain he was in, then they feel bad. But in that moment of, filming themselves or videotaping themselves, robbing someone. Aida, sit down. I have a dog, a Randy dog here. I might have to hear. Here she is. Like, dog in a sweater. Yes, I'm that kind of person.
A dog just jumped over the screen.
Right. Yeah, right. In her sweater. So what they're thinking about is showing off. They are, and that's just front and center. So we don't always consider all the ramifications of our actions, and that's just being human.
Well, here's another example. I don't know if this one fits in, but John Waters was writing in, I think it's in his book Role Models, and he talks about how pretty soon there are going to be no perverts. Because basically everything, that sexual is sort of, given the thumbs up, like there's no perversions anymore. So he says he's going to, and I'm probably, I'm not getting the quote exactly, but he's like, he's going to miss the days when, you'd walk into the men's room and you would look under the stall and you would see, a man sitting down on the toilet with paper bags on either side of him. And the paper bags would be for another man to stand in so he can get a blowjob without being seen, like a camouflage. And he's like, oh, I'm going to miss those days.
But see, he's talking about perversion. He needs to go to the Midwest. This idea that everybody is like we are on the coast. I live in Venice. This is, one of the weirdo capitals of the world. And I'm weird. So that's not a pejorative term for me. But, where I grew up in Farmington Hills, Michigan, they're not all that weird. And so, and the stuff about what he's talking about is just that now we don't think that, we don't look at gay people. They're just us. They're just people. I don't care how anyone has sex. And I wish they'd all shut up about it. Now the stuff of like, I get in trouble. No, it's like, your dad didn't announce himself at a brunch like, hi, I'm Frank, I'm a bottom. Just shut up.
We were all waiting. We were all waiting for Dad to finally come out and do it, but it had to come out during his eulogy. I think that's the kind of information you want to put out there.
No, but that's so sad. I used to get, when I first started doing my advice columns in the 90s, I got all these awful letters from kids in the South, and their choice was, do I come out and be who I am? Or do I keep my family's love? And I'm so thrilled not to get those anymore. I get maybe one every, I don't really get them. Maybe it's like one every 4 years, and it just has stopped. And so that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that we see now, nobody's like, excited that the two mommies together, live two mommies. It's just normal life now because we see it on television and everything. So even people who are more conservative are used to seeing that, socially conservative. I want to divide that from fiscally conservative. So, the stuff that there's exhibitionism in every area. People try to do stuff where they stand out from what are norms. Mm-hmm. They have sex, you can make a career with the sex tape, probably not anymore, but that happened for a long time.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I think there was a time I was trying to think about, like when I was in my 20s, where I bet, someone would pay me to like watch me masturbate, but now I would have to pay somebody to watch me masturbate.
Right.
It's just one of the,
there's that transition, right?
Yeah, man, we're just getting
but
older.
There's an Overton window of shame, and it's like the glass is missing, and like, in terms of sexual stuff, but that's good. That's really great, because people should just do what you need to do with another consenting person, and just shut up, because I really don't want to know. And also, I don't want to get any of your fluids on me. I went to a sex club once with a friend who came to New York from California, and I was just like, I just didn't want anything to fly on me.
Well, what place was it? Was it
the Vault? It was underneath. So I had friends who lived in that building on 14th Street.
Is it related to the Box? Because the Box, I think, was another like club.
Box is vagina, so maybe Vault is another like
a vault
vaginal
is
word.
It's weird. Is it a very hard vagina to get into? If it's a vault?
Yeah, there's like a combo lock and a little So the Vault was 14th Street, that triangular building near the meatpacking district. I had friends who lived there on top, and then we were bottoms. We went to the sex club, and then because I just was a thing to do, because I'll do anything if it doesn't involve eating bugs. and hurting anybody.
That is a different, not the vault, not the box, the hive. The hive is all bug eating, probably.
Oh, hive sounds like a disease, and I recently had hives, so full body hives, very sexy. That's a great thing about COVID. If you get a really bad haircut or you get full body hives, I was like a Dalmatian with tiny red spots because I'm all white and then red spots. It was horrifying. Nobody really needs to know because you just like cover up and on Zoom and.
Well, in this club, were people covered up at all? What was happening? Like,
there was like a man on the floor. He was like being a dog with a ball in his mouth and the leather and then people were having little orgies in rooms. Then, people were like, woman be beating somebody, whatever, just for me, that's just like, okay, whatever. Not what I do, but fine. No problem. Good for you. You're getting it on. You're having fun. Yay.
Yeah. I once said to the question, hey Lou, would you ever share your wife with another man? And I'm like, I don't even want to share a straw with another man.
I have straws. I kill a polar bear every time I use one. I'm proud of that.
I was the kid where, if I had say a can of soda and a buddy asked me, hey, can I get a sip? I would chug it and leave him a sip and then give it to him.
Oh my God, I'm dirty. This is why I probably have a better immune system than you. I'm dirty. I eat stuff off the floor. My house, I keep it clean. I'm untidy also. It's an ADD thing, but being dirty is good. And sharing stuff, basically the more you do that, then you get sort of, I'm making this up. I like to think that the dirtier, and the sharier I am, the more immune I am to whatever.
What are some of the I don't know, because some of the myths that a lot of people believe when it comes to science that you've basically like found
I'm terrible at that question. Okay. I'm terrible. This is like if you ask me what my favorite movie is, all I can say is Blazing Saddles, which is my favorite movie.
I just watched it. I just watched it for the first time. Yeah.
You're kidding. Did you grow up in a cult where they didn't let you have movies? How did you not see that before?
We watched all different. We watched so many movies, but I'd never seen it before. And I've kind of gotten on on like a Mel Brooks kind of binge.
He's awesome.
It was the first time I saw Blazing Saddles, and a lot of people have talked about it and said they're like, oh, there's no way you could make that today because of the racial stuff. And after watching it, I'm like, there's no way you can make it today because it's fucking insane. It is an insane fucking movie that breaks the fourth wall. It's so meta. At the end, there's fucking pie fights and gay dancers having fights with cowboys. It's bonkers. It is
That's the kind of movie I love. So I'll see other movies, but Airplane. Oh, also Kung Fu Hustle. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen Kung Fu.
Oh my God, that's awesome. One of the superheroes in that, she's an evil superhero. She's a housewife and she is the housewife. Cigarette hanging out of her mouth, house stuff. Kung Fu, Korean, Japanese. I like that I don't quite recall this. It must be Korean. Yes. I'm such a cultural.
I think Kung Fu's Chinese. Karate is Japanese.
Yeah, but I'm sort of confused. It was made by a Korean director. I'm a little confused. It's Asian. Let's leave it at that. But and she's rollers in her hair and she's angry and the house dress. I mean, it's just awesome. That's a little crazy. Also, Hell's a Poppin's an old one. I like all those crazy bonkers movies. Oh, and the greatest thing, David Zucker. I had a meeting there. He did Airplane and he thought I was funny.
That's awesome.
So that was like for me. Okay, so other people get a PhD. I get a meeting with David Zucker and he thinks I'm funny. It's like, I'm done. Cool.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it's awesome.
I have an episode coming up with a friend of mine, Dean Cameron, who is an actor. He was in a number of movies in the 80s that I like Summer School and all that. And he reached out to me like a year ago just saying like, hey, I'm a fan of your work. And I was like, holy shit, I grew up watching you, man. This is so cool. It's insane. He's a really great guy. And it's been great knowing him, definitely for the past year. He's a great dude. And that episode's going to be coming out maybe.
Sorry I didn't answer that well.
Oh, no, it's okay.
I'm bad at that. I'm just bad at that question. What I missed in my head instantly evacuates of them.
Yeah.
With them.
Yeah. What's like the latest research that I don't want to get into the book.
You're going to ask me that question. I can't answer either.
I know. What's something?
Although I found us. Okay. No, I'll shut up now. Go ahead.
What's something that people are like, oh, the science says, where you're like, well, actually,
Oh, and well, no, people we think We have intuition about the way things work. Well, a big thing actually is that there's this desire to say that men and women are the same.
Mhm.
And this is why I think I didn't finish my thought. Evolutionary psychology, I look at social science.
A man would have finished his thought right
Okay.
there.
Well, no, but you never know. Maybe a man with ADD wouldn't have. I look at social, now I forget what my thought was. I look at social science and I say, is there some reason this would be functional, evolutionarily functional, the finding that they have, that they're saying, oh, people are like this or do this. And so that's what I look at. And so men and women are physiologically different, and our emotions evolved and our psychology evolved to correspond to that. It's same. So for example, men, it's more, it's optimal for a man more so than for a woman in general to have casual sex, because a woman has higher costs. They're called obligate costs. Like if you have sex, what could be the greatest possible cost, or what's the cost that you would have imposed on you? The obligatory cost for women, it's, being pregnant for 9 months. Oh my God. And then having this child to drag around and feed. And then if she just had casual sex with some guy and he's gone, like, being a single mom on the savannah, that'd be pretty tough. No 7-Elevens, no baby formula. So for a man, the obligatory output for sex is a teaspoonful of sperm, and maybe a wave goodbye. Bye, see ya, thanks, that was great. And so women evolved to prioritize seeking commitment, and men who are providers, even women who want casual sex, when they have sex, this is John Marshall Townsend's research. I love this. So women who just want casual sex from a guy, the next morning he's gone and everything, and they think, does he like me? Will he call me? Now, this is a man they want nothing to do with, but they want him to want her. She wants him to want her because that's our emotional programming, and it's automatic. And the same way men, they have a sort of lack of commitment model until it's called short-term strategy versus long-term sexual strategy. David Buss and David Schmidt's research, and that it becomes optimal for a man to seek a long-term strategy if he wants a family, and not just to leave children all over the place, but a family with a woman, a meaningful partnership. Sounds like you have that with your wife, the sweet lover. So, or if a woman is so high, she's so high status mating wise that she's a 9, that he can't get her unless he commits to her. And so that will press a man to commit. And it's a timing thing too. Are you ready? Men in their 20s, just ladies, don't even bother for the most part. Like if you're in the Midwest, some people marry, I keep using Midwest, I'm from there, but some people, in more sort of socially conservative parts of the country, and women who want children will get married in their 20s. And the children thing is a concern. Women should be freezing their eggs if they're I'm going to have a career first. And men too. Men should freeze their sperm.
I do that just for fun. Just for fun. I mean, I got a freezer.
Popsicles.
I got a freezer. Why not?
That's so gross.
I just want to say, on that front, I met my wife. I think I was 31. She's in the room. Was I 31?
Hi.
She can't hear.
Okay.
So she's deaf. She's a deaf. No, I'm sorry. I have my headphones, so she can't hear. But I met my wife when I was 31, so I was out of my 20s, and I think we were dating for about 3 to 4 weeks, and I was going to move to L.A. And even though we had only known each other for 3 to 4 weeks, before I left, I was like, let's try to do a long distance relationship. And we did a long distance for a year, right? Now I look back at that and I'm like, I don't know who that guy is. I'm like, I don't know, but I can't understand that guy, but I was obviously so enamored with this woman that I was willing to, and she was willing, to do this.
Right.
And there was something there. And, obviously, how many, 7 years later, we have a baby, and things are things are going on. Things are going all right.
So just to tell men, the age to freeze your sperm, 35. That's when it starts. You better put it in the freezer, because after that, sperm. People talk about women biological clock and all this stuff, and the eggs get a little sell by date. Well, guess what, guys? You too. So be freezing that sperm 35 to 40, because what happens is you can be more prone to have a child with birth defects or psychological problems. It can be harder for the woman to get pregnant. She can miscarry, because of sort of wonky sperm. So that's why it's important for men and women to do that. And women need to understand also, that's the thing in their 20s, think about it. Do you want kids? Because, and also, do you want to be married? And this is the thing. Oh, so women don't like when I say stuff like this. But you're at your hottest in your 20s. So if I had a daughter and my daughter wasn't that attractive, no, this is people aren't honest, so they don't equip their kids with what they really need. If you're not that attractive, you're going to be at your hottiest in your 20s. Most people are. So, find somebody then, and see what you can do. How do you balance things with a career and having a kid? And maybe you don't meet anybody, and maybe you're in my 20s. I was just a mess. Oh, I'll tell a story that's in Unfuckology that I had this. I've only had one sort of abusive boyfriend. I mean, he didn't slug me or anything, but it was an abusive relationship. And when I was in my 20s, and I had a copy of Nathaniel Branden's Honoring the Self, and Nathaniel became a friend. He was a self-esteem guy, but not in the sort of bullshit way. He is a therapist. Anyway, this guy, he lit my copy of Honoring the Self on fire. And what did I do? I stood there and watched it burn.
Oh my God.
But later I bought a copy and I actually read it. But so I was immature in my 20s and I didn't have my shit together. And and that happened. So you may not be able to meet somebody, but so that's a good reason to freeze your eggs, because maybe you can carry the baby to term, but maybe you can't. The eggs are a little when you get around to the age where you can find somebody.
Man, I'm already thinking about, they say for parents, having the birds and the bees talk is awkward. I imagine it'd be really awkward to have an addendum to say, okay, this is how babies are made, and also you're not that attractive, so we're gonna have to find some ways.
Well, you can't say that.
No,
you have to find a way to help your kid without. I mean, if you tell your child that's just one of those things that's scarring for life for many people. And also, I don't think that the sex talk. I mean, sex is funny, but no,
kind of like a cliche.
But it is embarrassing. But it doesn't seem embarrassing because it's just sort of this is how sex happens. And kids, they used to. I think the hunter-gatherer kids. I mean, it's not like they had a 3-bedroom house or anything on the savannah, and some lean-to probably. So kids were right there when their parents had sex, probably. And this is just a thing now we're all freaked out about it, but it's just basically, this is your body. And I think if you raise kids, the kids I had a family that sort of adopted me in New York, and I'd stay with them. They just talked about everything. And so that if you raise your kids that way, then you can talk to them and they talk to you, because everything's just sort of mommy, her penis is whatever. And it's what, we're having a Zoom call right now. Darren, or whatever people name their kids, Brooklyn, Dakota, Aristophanes.
I grew up with I have 4 brothers, and one of my brothers is 12 years older. So there was a time he wasn't living in the house, but at one time there was 4 boys living in the house and my dad. So it's 5 guys, and
smelly.
Oh my God, and thinking about 3 teenage boys.
Holy crap!
The amount of semen my mother must have had to have dealt with. Oh my God!
Crunchy socks. Oh my God!
Yeah. I Old Faithful. I remember that sock. That
gross.
Was right there. Oh man,
it's grosser to be a guy. It just is. Except for periods. Periods are gross.
Yeah. I guess they're. I'm
not all period positive. It's gross. And do not call me a menstruator. I'm also not a shitter. Or I love when people say it's dehumanizing to refer to people in X way. So we're going to call you a menstruator. Really?
Well, how about the owner?
I prefer to be a shitter.
The owner of a vulva. How about that?
That's the best.
I
tweeted about that saying, I wanted a ferret for a while, and then I thought of getting a vulva, but I realized that it would come with the rest of the woman attached, and I don't have a crate big enough to keep her in.
Oh my God.
I love those prisoner or serial killer jokes.
With the so we're hitting a lot of topics here. One thing I definitely wanted to talk to you about was more of the mediation and how you got into how'd you get into that?
Oh, well, the truth is, I thought, no, writing stopped like papers going out of business. And I was kind of scared. And I thought, I always wanted to take mediation. And I thought, I better do this because what happens if I'm 80 and I'm sort of disabled? At least I'll be wise. I'll be disabled, but wise. So I'll be like a head on a cart that can wheel me in. Okay, the head's here. Everybody, step lively. And so, but actually, I love, I've always done what I do in these columns is conflict resolution. It's saying, do you see this person? Okay, so you're assuming that they see things this way. Maybe, is it possible they see things this way? And mediation's the same thing. And so I trained as a mediator. They had a free training through the LA City Attorney's Office. And I did that. And the deal is that you give them 200 hours of volunteer work. And now I am a behavioral science expert. And I went into the training thinking I will be the road runner amongst the wily coyotes of other trainees. And in fact, I was like the slow one because there was so much information and nobody read the homework. We were supposed to read 98 pages, which is nothing beforehand. So I read that. I was overwhelmed and I was terrible. It's so terrible that when I had my interview before volunteering, they said, we really don't think you're cut out for this.
Wow. To volunteer. You're not cut out.
I know, right? We don't want you to give your time for free because you suck that much. And I said, listen, I really, really am so passionate about doing this. And I said, I take criticism really well. This is the thing. With my writing, I hire someone to tell me that I'm not funny and suck and I'm unclear and I got the science is just a muddle because then I can make it better. And so I told them that. And I really was very, very open. And so I ended up getting one of the top awards. They give 2 awards for the top mediators in a year. And I got one of them after being like the slow bus person. Oh, to the extent that my first mediation call, you do intake calls. We did it in a conference room and normally you do it. So Caroline, my supervisor, would have been there. But like the heads of the program were there listening in. You have to ask the person because it's confidential. But what I didn't realize is that that's not normal. They wanted to see like, oh my God, is she going to shit the bed? But I did well in that one. And Caroline told me that day, something I did in that call made her know that I was going to be really good and okay and everything.
And what kind of, what kind of cases come your way?
Oh my God, I love the neighbor cases and the family cases. Those are my favorite. The business ones too. Noisy neighbors. Oh, people, the fence is on their lot. It's like 2 inches over the edge, or they're going to build this extension on their house and it's going to block out the view. And people making noise. Oh, and the weirdest thing is, okay, so you'll have 2 groups, it's clients, or we call them parties. P1 is party 1, and they're the one who calls in, and then P2 is the person. Sometimes there are more parties. They'll be of the same race, and they'll say racist things to the other person, and then to me about the other person. It's like, oh my God, can't you leave that to the dudes in the hoods?
Oh my God.
It was one of the amazing things I found out from this. But
did you learn any new racial slurs? Like they were like, oh, I didn't know that you called.
And also, I was bullied as a child, and I hate unkindness and bullying of any kind. I hate racism. I love Martin Luther King, and also the thing that you see through mediation that I saw is that many of the clients don't have money or anything, and they're very limited means.
Is that how they come to you? Is it sort of like why not through the courts? Is it because they can't afford it? Or?
Oh no! So this is an amazing thing. It's mediation is fast compared to and less emotionally traumatizing and doesn't cost anything, even if you pay. So I do mediation for hire. That's vastly less expensive than a lawyer. And I also mediation basically. I do these private sessions, which sounds like I'm an escort, but these are sort of like therapy without a therapist, whatever you decode or ring from the state or you call it coaching or something. But I do mediations too. And it's in an hour from these private sessions. I can tell you, here's how your thinking is irrational. You don't need to whine to me for a year. In fact, that'll probably make things worse. You don't need to whine to anybody for a year. Here's how your thinking is irrational. Here are actions. What if you take these actions? Will these work for you? Okay, you're probably going to fail. Here's how you're going to fail. We're going to pre-plan for that. And then you feel free, you can come back to me. But most people they have one session and I'm able to help them see their way, what they're irrational thinking is, how they behave differently. You repeat that behavior and that becomes your default behavior. And some of it, just to be clear, like in Unfuckology, I was a loser with no friends. And, and so I was like that. And then I was in my 20s and I was a suck up and I transformed. Now I'm badass and I assert myself and everything. But 20% of me is still like, I'm a worm. And when that comes
was
out,
that
like,
worm? Was that a worm? WORM?
Worm. Yeah, worm, like German. Worm. They probably say something else. But then the other 80%'s like, shut up, asshole. We've been through this, and then so I pull myself through that. And so that's good. And then I have that self-compassion and all that other stuff. But what I was saying basically in mediation, because I do have to come back to the circle,
topic at hand,
was that I see that even people who are wealthy, so some people would call us from Beverly Hills and want to mediate a thing with an issue with a neighbor. And everybody is suffering and struggling. You can look at somebody and say, oh, that person's wealthy. Well, maybe they have a kid who's going back into rehab or they have physical disabilities. And just to understand that, someone will be sharp with you on the phone or in a line or something. And it's so easy. It's automatic for us to be right back with sharp. But I try to remember, and it's so important that people are suffering and struggling. And if you can pre-plan to not do that, to just breathe in for a moment, and then also to spread some good. My previous book, Good Manners for Nice People, sometimes say fuck. I always have fuck in the title. That book is ultimately, it's about how we're living in society is too big for our brains, but the solution is actually that we need to reach out and do small kindnesses for strangers. And if you do that, it's like somebody won the lottery because you're never going to see them again, probably. You did this nice thing, you put money in their meter, or you got up from your chair to let them out of a cafe because they're carrying some stuff. And it feels so good because it's like this magic act. Oh my God, this person I don't know just rose up and took care of me. And that feels really good in a society that's transient and where we're isolated, even more so now. But, we used to live in the same town or the same house with our family. And now, you live next door to people maybe you don't even know.
Yeah, I live in a co-op in Brooklyn, and there are people who have lived on my floor probably for years who I've never seen before. I don't know. There's that. It's funny. When I moved in here about 11 years ago, and I was dating my ex, and we used to fight all the time. We used to fight all the time. And the neighbors across the way, it's a couple, a man and a woman. One day I was in the elevator with them, and the guy asked, like, "Oh, have you done unpacking?" Yeah, because we had just moved in, and the wife said, if you unpack, the chances of you breaking up are much higher. And it was such a like, I didn't even know what that meant. Like, I didn't know what it meant, but it was definitely a dig at the amount that we were fighting. And so that's like 11 years ago. My wife and I, we did a stint in L.A. We moved back. That woman still lives across the street, and she can't stand me. Like, when I walk, she just kind of like, it's like she's smelling sulfur. And it's like, wow, to her, I'm still the dude who was constantly like, fighting.
I want to mediate that. I want to mediate that. No, and the thing is, like, do you understand that I can see part of mediation. First, I give my intro, in which I do all these things to keep you from saying the same thing 55 times and do other things to not let you interrupt and everything. But then people talk. Each person gets to talk and nobody gets interrupted and the other person gets to talk. And then, I explain, well, look what you guys actually look, here you are, you sort of have some conflict here, but I wouldn't say it that way, but, you have a lot in common. And also then I would get into, do you understand that, Lou wasn't trying to harm you or bother you or anything. He was just suffering at a certain point and struggling.
And he really wishes you didn't hear him fighting every single night.
So he's embarrassed. Yeah. And the fact that now, I understand, of course, you don't want that in your life. And Lou, can you understand how they don't want, that in their life? I would be a little more, off the top of my head. But because I plan this stuff, I take a little break and then I plan what I'm going to say. But, and then, the people the goal is to have you empathize with each other and that they understand you were just a guy people who are fighting, you could say, so if you said to your neighbor, look, you gotta stop fighting and keep it down. it's not like that's going to solve your issues with the person you're not getting along with. You need to grow up or something,
it's funny in that instance that I'm talking about. After we did break up, I rode the elevator down with the husband of the the woman who hates me, and I said to him, and because I was pretty distraught after this relationship, and I said to him, I was like, I know that you could hear us fight for a long time, and I'm really sorry about that.
That's so great. You did
and then
that.
and then he said, I don't know what you're talking about. No, never heard anything. Don't worry about it. So, and it was like, oh, so at least he and I, sort of see eye to eye on that.
But see, that's a dude thing. So men don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, then he asked me, he's like, hey, how much semen do you have in your freezer?
He did not.
No. I want that to be a thing.
You know what you
I want
could
that
do?
to be the new thing.
Okay, so do you think, because I always look at things, I never assume, do you think it is possible that they didn't hear you?
No.
Okay.
I mean, because I had no other interaction with that lady other than screaming.
Okay, so if you wanted to repair the relationship, the guy, he just wants to pretend like nothing happened, because guys really don't want to talk about it. And that's fine. And women should understand that I don't want to talk about it is legitimate.
Right.
As legitimate as I do want to talk about it. And you have to find ways to meet in the middle, so guys show their emotions for action, blah, blah, blah. But you could actually give her some kind of gift that she wouldn't think was poisoned. And that would be like appropriately Brooklyn vegan, gluten-free, celiac, gender fluid, whatever desserts. Or something, a bottle of, even like a bottle of Pellegrino, which I left for my neighbor, which meant the world to him. And it's good because he had been in rehab, so I didn't give him a bottle of wine. But I put a big pink bow to welcome him here. That something like that, just to say with a card, not going all into detail, but just saying, I had some, hard times or something before, and, I'm sorry about the noise, and I'm glad to have you as neighbors, something nice like that, even though like you don't know her for anything, because that might clear the air. And then maybe she could say hello to you on the street, and you could just then once you like, my fantasy and my dream is that then you do that and she thanks you, like, thank you, that was so nice that you did, like, blah, blah, blah. And then that breaks the curse. But then you can smile at each other and talk to each other, because I hate that on the street when people walk past you and they're all snarly. And sometimes that's their own thing. Introverts, they don't want to talk to you, and it's not personal. It's just like they don't want to talk to anyone. So
you recently, a little while back, I guess, wrote a piece in Quillette about a horrible situation that you were, going through. For one, I'd like you, maybe talk a little bit about that. But also, do you think mediation is at all possible with the characters involved?
Oh, no. So mediation, you have to be in good faith. That's the thing. Like, it's parties in good faith that are coming in because they're willing to try to come to resolution together through this process. And it really is amazing. I mean, for me, mediation catnip is that I get the neighbors who hated each other to hug at the end. I've had that happen. That's the coolest. But sometimes you don't repair the relationship, more often than not with people. They just want the issue solved. And, but you get that solved and you get a signed agreement going out. Wait, what was the question? I forgot.
About the Quillette article that you wrote.
So yeah, I had a felon living outside my house. This is early release from prison for COVID. He is a guy, I looked him up because the cops actually helped me as much as they could. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. But he had a restraining order out on him. He's 38, like your age, from a woman who was 60, who I think was probably his mother, like domestic violence situation. So like, you beat up your mom. So he was in prison, early released August 14th, came right to my street. Now, what happened was our mayor Wet Dish Rag, Eric Garcetti, I hate him. He's terrible. I didn't vote for him. No one I vote for is ever elected. So anyway, the police, he stopped the police from being able to enforce some of the measures that they use to move on people who are violent or abusive. And this, I understand that for COVID, like the parking, like you can't on my street, you're not supposed to park from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning if you have a vehicle over 6 feet high. You have to move your vehicle every 72 hours. What else? There's street cleaning on Monday. So all of that was removed. So now the problem is, the police weren't allowed to enforce these. So normally what used to happen is that a captain or somebody at that level would have discretionary enforcement. He could say, you know what? This person is so abusive to all these neighbors on this block, and I'll tell you what the felon was doing, that we are going to tell him he had 5 years of expired registration. Oh, and this guy, it wasn't some poor homeless person. He had a really shiny Harley with leather saddlebags. He had a house in Riverside worth $750,000. And then he had a VW van with solar panels at the top. And then his girlfriend was in there.
He really cared about the environment. So, way to go.
So, oh my God. Yeah, our environment. So he came to my street and was in front of my house. And so now I'm writing this intense book. So I don't know if you're out there unless you make noise. This girl slamming, she's angry. This is before he got here. She was here a few days before, slamming that door of the VW van and doing it at 3 a.m. So then my dog would bark and wake me up. And then, the van noise woke me up too. But if that didn't happen, then my dog would start barking and then wake up my neighbors. Because my dog's trained not to bark, but if there's what she perceives as danger, she'll do her little yippity yap thing. That's like, oh yeah, you're so dangerous. And then the guy came with his Harley, and then he started just running the bike. It had those no exhaust, the thing where they take off the mufflers, really loud. And he'd just leave it on for 10 minutes. And my neighbor next door, she's an infant, a baby, wake a baby. He'd do this all day. And then at night, and he'd go back in the van, just leave it to bother all of us because he could. And then when I said something really weenie, like, please be respectful, like with the noise or something, leaned over the fence. Cause I have a 6-foot fence with a iron gate and everything that's got wood around it. He then cranked the fumes to fume into my house and kept doing that. It's horrible. So the police, they kept coming out and apologizing. He's like, we're so sorry. We can't do anything. And then one day, and he banged on my gate and did all this violent stuff. So I was afraid to leave my house. I took out the trash. The police were here, and I was like, do you guys have a second so I can run out back because the trash really smells? It was so crazy. And this was because the mayor refused to let them enforce, to have any discretionary enforcement. So the police did what they could. This one guy's like, I'm on at 3 a.m. Do you want me to drive past and blare my siren and flash the lights at the van because it would show them police presence? He's like, look, it'll wake up the neighborhood. And I'm like, great or good. Do it, man. Thank you. I'd hug you, but for COVID. And so what it came down to is I was told I'd have to get a restraining order. Like, and that's really, I can't even tell you, that's hard.
Right.
It's 50 pages. You fill it out all wrong. I had this legal aid lady helping me. Finally, the 9/11 call. This is the thing. I never wanted to have a gun. I'm a boob when I'm afraid. I'm scared. I shouldn't own a gun. I'll probably just shoot myself, even if I train for 400 hours or something. But 9/11, the guy was pounding violently in my gate and screaming, threatening things. And I called 911 and they took an hour and a half to come. It was crazy. And no, we don't call, this is a neighborhood filled with people. They're like video editors or whatever, retired. We're not exciting people with like violent lives. So we call 911 sometimes when like there was a homeless woman who was screaming in the parking lot being beaten up by 2 guys. So like it was like 1 a.m. or guys fighting or something because there's a bar near here, but cops would come like pronto, like in a minute or something, or maybe take 3 minutes if they weren't that close. But this thing of an hour and a half, I was just like, oh my God, I got to buy a gun. No, I don't want a gun. But, what it came down to from talking to some friends is I should get one of those little house on the prairie style shotguns because that way I wouldn't kill the person, but I'd disable them and spray buckshot all over the place. And so maybe I'd have a chance of hitting them. Whereas if I had a regular gun, I'd probably not know how to, undo the safety, which I know from TV.
I think you could totally kill a biker. I think you have it in you. I believe in you.
I don't kill anyone. I just want to be in my house and be boring. See, if they had been quiet out there, I wouldn't have known they were out there. Yeah. I wouldn't care. My feeling is like, okay, you have a bar. You want to have an orgy in there and light yourselves on fire? None of my business. As long as your music doesn't boom, boom, boom into my pillow at 1 a.m.
If you want to open up,
fuck you up.
If you want to open up the West Coast version of the Vault and have it, in a van.
I'm pro sex club. Yeah. Like I think that's good, wholesome fun. Wear a condom and whatever. And
and how did how'd the story end?
So he ended up, I was on the last part of this restraining order. And by the way, a legal aid, because things got a little tough last year. So I was like eligible for that, which totally sucks, but was great. This woman, Jenny N, she was so great. She was helping me on the phone and I sounded stressed out. And I think I sounded like almost in tears. And she's like, just listen, you take a break and we're going to talk in 20 minutes or something. So I went and sat on the couch and petted my dog and I heard this grinding sound. And the guy was getting his, shows he's not poor, getting his van. He was just here to abuse us. Van towed on a flatbed truck, AAA flatbed, getting it towed off our street. Because the cops had said they'd offered them, they were awesome. This Adrian Acosta was our local community policing guy. He was really good. He offered them safe space to park. Their Safe Park LA and their bathrooms and their social services and everything. My boyfriend's like, what are you, crazy? Your neighborhood, that's where all the drugs are. They don't want to move to some like parking lot with police supervision. Nobody wants to do that. And so they were just taking advantage and staying on our street, and like this thing of people wrote the Catholic Worker of Venice or something wrote to me that I was some compassionless person. Oh, I know. I wrote about violent vagrants on the beach. Hi, they're these like crazy meth people. They're horrifyingly scary. But I've taken care of a homeless guy. He's now has a roof over his head. For many, many years, I now just get his mail. That's what you can do for someone who's homeless. They need a permanent address. So I get his VA and Social Security mail, and then I priority mail it to him. He's in Illinois. I love him. Looked after him and helped him get a way to earn a living and stuff. And this Chris Rufo, he's done a lot of work. He's a Manhattan Institute scholar.
Yes, and he's written in City Journal quite a bit.
Yeah, he explained something important, and I went to one of the dinners from Manhattan Institute, and he was speaking that about 80%, I think 78% of the homeless are mentally ill and or seriously addicted, and then 20% are like my friend. They just need some support. He could never like pay bills on time. So he got a Winnebago and it got towed and stuff like that. But he is such a hard worker and such a good man. And it's not that people aren't a good man if they're addicted, but it's that he wasn't some criminal. He wasn't on the street because he was lazy. He was afraid to be in the shelters. He was a little guy. And so, but those people, the 20%, they're people who are down on their luck. They lost their job, they had some health issues, and they're living in their car. Those people, you give them housing and some social services and a suit to wear to job interviews, and they'll get right back on their feet, or maybe not right back on their feet, but they'll start the process, and they're not going to just be perpetually homeless. And the problem is this housing first idea. That they have, well, first of all, they only housed, I think, like from 2016 to 1962 people in these like $700,000 condos. Hi, really? Can I have one of those?
Right.
I rent.
It's so frustrating because, reality is staring you in the face, and there are people who are saying like, oh, you're a compassionate, you have no compassion because you don't want a violent criminal outside threatening you. And it's just, do you have you ever been on the Nextdoor app or nextdoor.com?
Twitter for old people?
Yeah. Well, I was loving it when I started it. I got on the one in my neighborhood because I looked at it as an opportunity to make restaurant recommendations and hey, does anybody know a good tailor or something like that?
You're so pro-social.
But the same people that have ruined Facebook have gone over and ruined Nextdoor because they make it, political now. And it's like, what the hell? What's wrong with you people?
I thought they're not allowed to do that. I don't know, there are all these rules in Nextdoor, and they didn't like something I said because I'm libertarian. Mm-hmm. And so that to people, and some people, it's just like saying like I'm Ava Braun. And so somebody
she wasn't libertarian enough for me, Ava Braun. So
somebody reported me. I'm a public figure. My column runs in the local paper with my picture on it, the same one that's on Nextdoor. Someone said not her real name. I'm like, oh my God, Google me. My dog's taking the opportunity to be naughty. She's not allowed to bark. Aida, come here. Come on. Oh, she's being naughty now. Okay, hopefully she won't keep doing that. She uses the opportunity with some person on for an extended period of time. She's not allowed to make noise, but she just does.
That's not her real name. There's no way Aida is her real name.
Well, no, I stole this joke, so I like to confess I stole it from Katie Herzog. I confused her screen name on Twitter with her real name. But she said, I rescued my dog from a breeder. So I did too. And the breeder was so awesome. Actually, New Jersey, she's a Jersey girl. She's Chinese crested, that I kept the name they gave her, which was really dumb because they don't need you to do that. I was like honoring the breeder. Dumb idea, because Aida is the worst dog name. And when you go to the vet and you ask about your dog, they call her Ada like she's a cleaning lady. So I'm like, from Verity, then I sound like pretentious twat. So I am sort of pretentious twat, but that's,
I think that would be a really great handle for nextdoor.com, pretentious twat.
Pretentious twat. Oh my God.
I'm so tired of this libertarian pretentious twat commenting about all of this stuff. But I bring up the Nextdoor app because I think a kind of a similar thing happened in regards to the homeless in the neighborhood. There was this guy, this homeless man, who was living basically under the scaffolding that was outside of a church, sleeping there all the time. He has so much stuff. Like he's kind of like a homeless hoarder, like just all this junk that he brings with him. And he's a big guy. He's probably like 6'3", definitely, maybe close to like 300 pounds. And he's an asshole. He's an asshole. Every single time anybody walks by him, he has something to say. He has something to say about it. And it's like, the way I look at it is like, look, dude, if you're going to be like sleeping in our neighborhood, like just don't be a dick, just like, I don't make an excuse for you.
Mediator interruption. That I see that he is, I think this is a guy, he's living on the street. He's suffering and he's angry and he resents all of you people walking past there.
But here's the thing. We have the inside scoop. The people at that church were trying to get him, better living conditions and actual, other places. There was housing for him. There were people who come around, like social workers and stuff like that. He refused. Like, this guy wanted to live out that church. But I mention him because on Nextdoor, a person in the neighborhood said, I'm about the same size as that man, and I was getting rid of some old clothes. So I asked him, would you be interested in me giving you some of my clothes? And he said sure. And he said, I was happy to help. I saw another human being in need, and I helped him. And he said, yeah, ever since I've done that, every time I walk by, he curses at me and says like, oh, that's the motherfucker who gave me dirty clothes. Fuck that guy and all that. And he's saying, I'm really concerned because he's right on my way to work. And is he dangerous? Is he dangerous? And somebody else in the comments section said, no, he's not dangerous. Don't worry about him.
You can't really know that.
No, exactly. And here I am thinking, well, wait a minute. I live down the block in an apartment, and I'm married, and I have a job, and I don't shit on the street, and I'm dangerous. I'm a dangerous man. I could hurt someone if I wanted to.
I'm dangerous.
But I could snap and hurt somebody or like that. And it's like, and I'm trying to think of the mentality of some people who can look at a dude who is, outwardly aggressive, cursing at people, and be like, oh no, there's nothing to worry about there. Yeah.
But see, you can't say that. And this is why in my piece, I just said, we cannot have people living on the street. What happened to this standard? And there was this Boise court case and everything. So there's housing first, which is just stupid because you cannot house. They're like, I don't know, maybe it's, I forget the number, 50,000, 42,000 homeless people, probably more on the street now, thanks to Garcetti since 2013. It's just skyrocketed. Yeah. You can't just, we're going to give you all an apartment. Oh, fantastic. Really? Why are we going to we have a money tree, we have an apartment tree too. It's idiotic. But what we need, Jim Perez, who's a Venice resident, had this great idea of, well, let's put up FEMA tents on this land at the airport. And there's some bureaucratic bullshit FAA reason you can't do that. But there is a plot of land somewhere in LA, and we need to have some sort of shelter, not great shelter and fantastic shelter. So it doesn't become like, I'm going to go get my free apartment, and some people should, like those 22% who can be helped. Maybe we give them housing. Maybe they have shared housing, roommates, blah, blah, blah. But there needs to be a way to say to people, and it's only by being able to provide, to say, you must not sleep on the street, and you either go to social services, go to a church, someplace that'll house you, a friend, or you take the city housing. We're going to take you there, in this whatever bus or something. because this is not tenable. We can't have these dangerous people because they could all be dangerous.
Yeah. And it's also not
living in the
compassionate
street.
to the people who really need help,
And I feel for this guy because I think that people, this is my assumption, of course, but that somebody who gets clothes from a man and then, lashes out at him. Now, maybe the guy, respect is so important. Maybe the guy didn't clean his clothes well. People they give stuff to Goodwill, like little, figure like maybe the smell will wear off or something. I mean, you shouldn't, but, like in mediation, there's positions versus interest. Positions that's the thing, your stated thing you want. Like, I want you to not put your trash can in front of my driveway and just leave it there. That's the thing, we say we want, but underneath that is the emotion. And that's like, I want to be treated with respect. And so that's why I, feel for that guy, because I see that and that he's doing that. Like, it's a way maybe of lashing out and saying like, yeah, I need your old clothes, like to sort of lash out angrily at the guy, but we don't know. And that's why that man should not be like, if you are living on the street, like if you're walking through my living room, I could like hit you with a small kettlebell or do whatever.
Well, and I felt bad too because he's an older gentleman. He's probably at least like in his mid 40s, and he obviously doesn't have a freezer in which to keep his sperm. Like you said, it's very important. I think that for me, that's going to be the running theme. I'm not going to be able to think about our conversation sperm? Right now without thinking of, man, did I freeze enough sperm this morning?
Sperm sickles. Yeah, right. Oh my God. God. That needs to happen, that shelter first thing. And just that we have these kinds of, the people that we elect in California, Governor Hairgel, who goes to the French restaurant. Oh, the best was some guy in OC who had some like strip mall, like ethnic restaurant, maybe Thai or something. I couldn't tell because it was covered up. He put a banner over his strip mall restaurant sign that said French Laundry because hey, get to stay open if you're like ritzy.
Yeah.
Like Nancy. So did you see Queen's Gambit?
I would check in every now and then. My wife was watching it.
Okay. So I watched this because how black girls have black dolls? They're like, that became more of a thing. Red-haired girls, no, there's not a representative doll for people like me born in 1964. So I had Raggedy Ann. So I watched that show for two reasons, because it's like an orphan makes good and she's smart. Well, that's, I guess, few. And then also she has red hair. It was like a representative actress. And so my hair is like, because I have COVID hair, because like the person who cuts my hair, I'm not Nancy Pelosi, obviously. So the person who cuts my hair and moved to San Francisco like a week before March 15th. You're all like sensitive about your hair.
I got my hair cut today. So I'm.
You did? By whom? Yeah. Do you have a Flowbee?
No. I went to, what is a Flowbee? What is that?
George Clooney has one. It's a vacuum cleaner hair thing that you can cut your own hair with.
How dare you? Charmaine, who cut my hair, did a fantastic job.
Charmaine, I love that. It's Sharpay.
And yeah, well, I kind of have a little bit of I have some product in it, so I got a little bit of the Gavin Newsom sort of thing. But I don't have the awkward smile when I'm trying to apologize.
Right.
Like that dude, what's going on?
My hair lady, she's so awesome. She moved up there. She's going to come back here like every few months, whatever. But right then, she had a job at a new salon. They were so excited for her. And then the salon's closed. And so she's now with her parents in Michigan. Wow. Well, Nancy Pelosi's getting her hair cut. Like, I had this cute, like, curly, like, Jufro thing going on. And now this is my grown out hair. And then Queen's Gambit, as soon as I saw that, I went in the bathroom with the curling and it was like, oh, look.
Yeah.
So
a part of me, I want to think of the all of the politicians that are basically not abiding by the rules that everyone else does. They're not hypocrites. They're heroes. They are putting themselves, their bodies, their health on the line. They're basically saying, look, I know there's a curfew. I'm out past the curfew. I know you're supposed to wear a mask. I'm not wearing a mask. I know you're supposed to social distance. I'm not social distancing. Why? Because I'm calling COVID. I'm saying, come here, fight me now. I'm going to take you out with my bare hands. Amy, thank you so much for doing this, for having this conversation with me. For those of you who are listening or just experiencing Amy for the first time, she's brilliant and she's so much fun. And is there anything you'd like to plug?
Oh, yeah. Buy my book. I should have it with me. But Unfuckology, a field guide to living with guts and confidence, is in trade paperback, makes it affordable for everyone. So, yeah, thanks for having me. This is really fun.